Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Ladd, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 158. So we are continuing on our fourth year of weekly podcasts, and boy, oh boy, do we have a guest for you today. He's someone that we were Pete and I were very, very lucky and very privileged to spend some time with on the weekend just past at the Britain's Strongest Disabled Man and Woman in Chard in Somerset. And he's very, very kindly allowed us to spend some time with him today. He is incredibly busy. He's currently in Wales, ready for a Giants Live event this weekend, including World Deadlift Championships and things like that. He is the 4 times world's strongest man, Magnús Ver Magnússon. How are you doing, Magnus?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, we normally do a little bit of kind of patter between the hosts before we start, but I think as we've got you on, and as I've already said to you, I've got some questions that have come in from listeners that I'm going to be we can talk about, and I really want to kind of maximize the amount of time that we have talking to you about, you know, your life and your competition history and what you do now and your training and all the rest of it. So I think we'll kind of roll straight into that. So I suppose, Magnus, you're obviously world's strongest man in 91, 94, 95, 96. It was right around the time where I was, would I have been an early teenager? Yeah. And I've been watching the world's strongest man on TV in the UK.
Yeah, and I was second, 92 and 93.
I know you were. Yeah, yes. You came second in 92 and 93. And I think you're only one of 2 people who've won it 3 times in a row, aren't you? 3 years in a row. Yeah. I think it's you and Kaz, isn't it? Bill Kazmaier, I think. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and prior to that, you know, you came in through powerlifting, I know. So, and I think you're also a European powerlifting champion in 91. So yeah, I mean, maybe, and obviously, if people don't know, you're from Iceland, you know, you're Icelandic. I want to talk to you a little bit about that as well, because I've been doing some research lots of research this week and research on Iceland and the population of Iceland and the number of times, you know, someone from Iceland has won, you know, the world's strongest man compared to the population, which is just, it's incredible. But yeah, maybe one of the questions we had actually, which has come from a listener, which maybe we can kind of start the journey, I suppose. What age were you when you started strength training? I think you were very active when you were young and you were very kind of strong from a young age, but kind of how did strength show up in your life? And then when did you start to formally kind of start to train strength?
Well, I was living in the east coast of Iceland with a town of like population of 1,000 people. And over the winter time, a lot of the times there was snow, you know, for days or something. You couldn't even get to the next town unless you would go on a big snowmobile. And that's where the airport is actually for that part of Iceland. But a new chief of police came there, and he was one of Iceland's first weightlifters, and he was about the first powerlifter. And he got involved with the sport council, whatnot. We started training, doing got some weights. They got some weights ordered, like I think it was 2 bars and some weights, and there was a bench there we could use and a stand that somebody had used before, and we just started training. Now we were in. This was kind of funny. It was like the swimming pool there. That was also over the winter time. That was also the gymnasium. They put a floor over the swimming pool, and that was our gymnasium when the school was. So we would show up, bring out of the storage whatever we were using that day, weights and everything and train and then put everything back when we left. So it was kind of, kind of raw, but that's how I started. And I trained for a little bit. I went up north, did my first powerlifting competition. Did pretty good. I was in a minus 90 kilo class, which is pretty light for my height. And I just kept on training. Yeah, I was doing all sorts of things. I was learning. I was mechanic welding. I worked in fish factories. Was also in school, and I did a couple of months on a fishing boat. But lifting always had a pull. So I decided to move to the city, to Reykjavik. Just do some school, but also to pursue my training. I kind of believed that and felt that was something for me. I had done all sorts of training, basketball, soccer, and handball, and bit of shot putting, and discus throwing, and things like that. But this always getting stronger, or lifting heavy things, always was fascinating to me, and so I decided to pursue that.
Who was so what age would you have been when the new police chief came and brought the weights and started training? Would you have been a teenager then?
I was about 18.
Okay, yeah. And were there any influences for you early in your life? I mean, did you see anybody in magazines or books or films, or were there local people?
Well, I did see on TV some weightlifting and some powerlifting. And after I started training, it was kind of funny. We were all sitting, my friends and we were sitting on this place there that people could come together. And the TV was on, and there was powerlifting. And I remember seeing John Paul Sigmarsson pull a big deadlift that was something, and he yells out this famous thing, Þetta ekkert mál fyrir Jón Paul. This is like nothing for Jón Paul. And I said to my friends, one day I'm gonna be there. And I kept at it. I kept on training. Like I said, moved to the city, competed in junior championships, competed I think European Junior Championships. I started getting a bit heavier, carrying more muscle, but this didn't happen overnight. It took some serious training, and I stopped school and I just started working at night as a bouncer, just to have more time to train, because pay over if you're working nights were better. And it ends up in 91, I go to the European Championships. I had actually been to the European Championship, I think the year before or year before that. And I think I became a European champion at that time. I can't remember exactly. No, not quite. Doesn't really matter. But in 91, I became European champion. I was in the minus 125 kilo class. And I beat the super heavies as well, with over 50 kilo in total. I was the highest on a point of all the over 100 competitors. And I was in Scotland the next weekend doing Strongman and Highland Games and stuff.
Okay.
So I was kind of fortunate. I believe I was athletic. I had done some of that training a little bit, and usually I would go to Scotland to do Highland Games. I would do about 3 throwing sessions before I went. I became twice, I think, third of the Highland Games World Championships, helped by Douglas Edmonds. But in '91, after winning that, people got interested, and John Paul Sigmarsson pushed my name forward. And actually, we went to Canada to do a competition, and the World Muscle Power, where I was kind of shocking people a bit, and I was beating way bigger guys than me. And 5 weeks before, I was on the list. I've been contacted about, they wanted me to be a reserve for the competition, but you're a reserve, but you're an equipment tester. Equipment tester is always an equipment tester that tests the events for the cameras to make sure everything works. They might have to change the camera angles or whatnot. So that was supposed to be my job. Now I get a call 5 weeks before, I think it was 5 or 4 weeks before World's Strongest Man, telling me John Paul Sigmarsson just tore a bicep, and he was out of the game. Jamie Reeves had tore a bicep, he was out of the game. And they wanted me to compete. And I said, okay. And I went there, I won it. I had basically won it before the last event. I didn't even have to win the last event. So, but I still did it, finished it. And, people were going like, well, where the hell did this guy come from? It's like, just like comes out of nowhere and beats everybody. So, there was people whispering around that, that I was lucky, this one guy wasn't there or this wasn't there. So the year after was actually held in Iceland. And I did a mistake, and that costed me the title that year, which if I would just not done that mistake, I would have gained the title again. But it is what it is. And year after that, in '93, in January, I think, I remember right, John Paul passes away. So my head wasn't in the game, really, not enough. And I go to the Worlds, and still come second to Gary Taylor. I'm like, wait a minute. If I would have come prepared, I would have, had my act together. I could have won it. So I went back to the drawing board, trained by my ass off, just to prove a point that I wasn't just lucky, and came back and won 3 years in a row.
So I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? Because so you won in '91, you came second in '92 and '93, and then you won again in '94, '95, and '96. So that whole kind of start of the '90s through to the mid '90s, you were kind of, you were the face, really, weren't you, of World's Strongest Man, and you dominated, much of that time.
I did. I did a lot of other shows. I didn't have any of the equipment to train on. I just trained in the gym, but I did a lot of movements to symbolize what I would be doing. I did a lot of step ups, did a lot of squats, but step ups were to symbolize you doing truck pull or this and that. Funny enough, I never even trained the truck pull. I just did it, but I knew how to do it somehow. I didn't train the Atlas stones. It's just like a lot of these things kind of just were like natural to me. nowadays everybody is privileged and everybody has a set of stones. Everybody has a log or has all the equipment to train on, which I believe is a reason some of the weights, some of the records have gone higher, because the more you can specifically train for a thing, you'll get better at it for sure. But at that time, because we were doing, we were basically like powerlifters, so we were this and that, and at some point, this was kind of a side thing, but then I started getting more involved, going here and there to Finland, whatnot, to Scotland, and that was my event training. Most of these shows I took as event training. I really only tried to get serious, really serious once a year, and that was World's Strongest Man, and it paid off.
So I mean, with John Paul Sigmarsson, who you mentioned, he won World's Strongest Man 4 times as well, didn't he? In the 80s.
Yeah.
So and he was also obviously from Iceland, and was he someone who at the time you looked up to? Was he someone who helped you as you were coming through, or did you not really have that much of a relationship with him? You said he recommended you as a a reserve.
We were good friends. We would sometimes train together, and I heard from some other people that he did mention me, saying that I was going to go places.
Yeah.
So no, he would encourage me to go on. He would not like try to stand in anybody's way. And towards the end, I had the privilege to compete with him in many shows, and actually with a lot of guys. I competed when I started out. I was competing against Kazmaier, Jamie Reeves, O.D. Wilson, Manfred Herbal, just like monsters of a man. These were big men, and I realized I could beat them. And
weren't you the only? Is this right? Did I hear you? Because you were doing a radio interview in the hotel, weren't you? And I think Gary said you're the only person, like novice, to come through and actually win it first time. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm the only one that came in as a reserve to win.
Yeah.
Actually, Joko Ahola, Finland, he won it first time he was invited to it. First time he got to the World's Strongest Man.
But for you, like you say, you were due to go and basically just be a reserve and check the kit and be there to and 4 weeks beforehand you get called up and then you turn up and you win. Yes, that's the first time ever ever before, ever up to that point, and never since. So that's fantastic. So I suppose one of the other questions I got asked, because it's quite good that the way we're talking about this is kind of leading sort of sequential manner, was it said, someone asked, when did you first have the goal of becoming the world's strongest man? Was it ever like something that you really thought, I will win that one day, or was it just kind of like almost fate that you got the call up and you were there and you won? Was it an ambition of yours for years previous, or how did that work?
It was always in my mind that to make my way to World's Strongest Man at some point. Even even the same year in '91, actually, I had the sports club from the East Coast sponsor me a couple of flights so I could travel more to Scotland, and from that we went to the games in Canada and whatnot, because I wanted to establish my name. I wanted to show those people that were involved, inviting athletes to World's Strongest Man, that I was a serious contender. And hey, when I got the chance, I was going there to win it.
Yeah.
Without doubt. I did not have a doubt that I had the chance to win it.
Because it's interesting, isn't it? Because you see a lot of people who go maybe for their first one, and like Pete almost said, many people, they'll turn up and maybe they'll place fourth one year, then they'll place third, then they'll place second, then they'll go for the win, and it kind of takes people time to get there. But you turned up as reserve, and in your mind, which actually kind of leads on to another question, but in your mind, you turned up and you were going there to win. You weren't going there to place on the podium in the top 3. You thought, I'm going to go and I can win this thing.
I was not going just to take part.
Yeah,
that's for sure. I wanted to take that and keep that title in Iceland.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, because did Jean-Paul Sigmarsson won it in? Did he win it in 90? He won it the year. Yeah, he won it the year before, and then you won it in 91. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, because the next question,
there was some big shoes to fill to step in his place, and there was no way I was gonna let that down.
Yeah,
I think I'll encourage people to go and look him up on YouTube and stuff, because I remember watching World's Strongest Man late 80s, early 90s, into the 90s when you were there, and when John, and he was the one that stuck, him and Jeff Capes, because Jeff Capes was British, obviously, but and he stood out in the late 80s. And then I saw some videos recently, and it's just, he was saying, he was shouting, he's like, I am a Viking, he was shouting all that, and then I think he was doing a truck pull, and he was like, what do you think about that, when he did it like super quick and everything, and he was just such a showman. It was amazing. So I'd encourage people to go and watch all those old YouTube videos. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. One of the questions then, which I think will probably, because obviously the stuff that you're talking about, Magnus, very, a handful of people in the world will ever experience what you have done and what you achieve and the level of competition you've been in. But for most people who are training for some endeavor of strength or something, someone asked me a question. They said, with your kind of mentality and your mindset, when you're going to maybe approach a lift that you've never lifted before, you're going for a personal record, and it's something, and I suppose within your life, you may be about to do something or lift something that no one has ever lifted before. It's kind of like a world record or never been done before. What, with your mindset and your mentality, what are you thinking leading up to that lift? I mean, how do you prepare for like a huge feat of strength that is going to be, like your personal best and possibly a world record?
Well, I've come to a lot of, like big things. I've pulled a big ship in the harbor. I've pulled the biggest dump truck in the world. Trains or whatnot, big airplanes, and when you see these things, they're big and intimidating. But I can focus, I can believe, and I kind of visualize me doing it, and I visualize me how I do it, how my body posture is, how to position myself, and it's like even especially lifting like nature stones. I loved lifting nature stones because I was good at it, first of all, but I could feel the stones before, and I could remember, even though you're going full gas, I could remember exactly how I wanted to grab it, each stone, even though they were different looking. And that's part of that visualizing, seeing yourself do it and just following that.
So would that be, you'd visualize yourself doing it just prior to it, or would it maybe be in the days leading up to it? If you knew that you were doing a World's Strongest Man and you knew you had this event where you're pulling a plane or something.
Yeah, if I know it's coming out, days before or something like that, it kind of starts sinking in. But no, it's just like 10, 15 minutes before. I was sewn into just my own, zone. I was just like, and my vision would just go like that, and this is what I'm doing. Nothing else matters.
And do you ever have any, I suppose if you do have any doubts, then you don't lift it, do you? So you have to kind of eliminate all doubts or fears. Is that, or are they still there?
It is actually. I always remember one time, especially one time, I was going for Icelandic record in the squat. And it was in the 4th attempt. So, I take it from the rack, and I'm like, oh, this is so light. And I walk out and take the step. Suddenly, it just felt unbelievable heavy on my shoulders. And my mind starts trying to tell me, it's too heavy, you're not going to be able to do it. It is, this always happens really fast, but it was like everything was going slow. And I turned it around. I started telling myself, no, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. It's light. And I did it.
That's amazing. That reminds me of Dave Whitley when he speaks about. So he's actually a performance strongman. I don't know if you've heard of him, but his mentor is Dennis Rogers, who's apparently, arguably, pound for pound, the strongest person who's ever lived, because he's only a little fella, but he's super strong, and he drives nails through boards with his hand and stuff like that. And apparently he was doing it once, and for some reason, the nail went through his hand. And I think Dave Whitley said he witnessed that, didn't he? Or he saw the video. And then for a while after that, he couldn't do it until he met Dennis Rogers, who said, you've just got to believe in your head. And if you believe in your head, the nail will go through the board. And that changed his whole world after that, apparently. He told us a story about that. And he was saying he did it in, I think it's Think and Grow Rich, the Napoleon Hill book, isn't it? Like whatever you can believe, whatever the human brain can believe and conceive and believe, then it can achieve. And he was big on that. And he just changed it for himself. To put himself in that position. And then he's been driving nails. He was just teaching people this past weekend, actually, how to do it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
If you believe you can do it, you should be able to do it.
Yeah.
There's the power of the mind. Power of the mind is a really, really strong tool to have. And sometimes the power of the mind takes over the power of the body. And actually makes you do things or lift things that you wouldn't even have expected before, but that the mind forces you to do it.
Is there something that you manage to tap into? Because I think a lot of the people, the average individual, when they look at extreme, or it seems extreme, or very high level results, there seems to be a commonality across high performers where they are able to create a direct link between that mind and the action, which doesn't appear to be interrupted by everyday life. I mean, there's a kind of video going around YouTube of Muhammad Ali being interviewed, talking about all the parties and things like that, and how does he focus? And he said that it's not really the training that's challenging, it's cutting all the extraneous noise out there.
Yeah.
Is that something that you practiced, or something you just had from childhood, that you naturally had developed that ability to create that mind action connection without the interruption of everyday life? Because my God, I mean, I'm in the summer holidays at the moment and just trying to balance my life with the kids and all those things and still run a business and stuff. It's really challenging, let alone perform at the level you were. How did you do it? Is it natural to you, or something you developed?
I don't know. I think it kind of came natural. I always had this ability to kind of shut everything out. I'll just shut everything out, and like and get super focused. It's almost like having some kind of a HCSD or whatnot, you know. And I believe that's one of the reasons that Tom Stoltman can sometimes do what he does, because when he gets that super focus. Now, you're doing things and you just get into your own zone. You're in your own zone. You don't hear anything. You know, you don't hear anything. You know, somebody might be telling you to do something or whatnot, and that's when, you know, when the coaches are on the side or they're yelling instructions to you. That wouldn't have worked with me because I wouldn't have heard it. I'd be in my own zone. And the funny thing is, like, I'd never had a coach. I was my own coach. I figured things out on my own. I took, you know, there was no internet, there was no this or that, and I read about things. I experimented with training and all sorts of, and I figured out my way of doing things and my way of training things. And you know, I can get more into that later, how I like to train and how I would recommend people to train. But it's again, that's all individual.
Because I think when we were talking at the weekend, and you said that you trained harder than everyone else. You know, you trained harder than everyone else, and you said I still do train harder than everyone else. And because I think so yeah, I mean, you obviously early on when you started powerlifting and when you had your, you know, the police chief and stuff was doing, so I presume you had some coaching sort of early on in the kind of the powerlifting and things like that. But when you got to Strongman, like you say, you were doing things that, like you say, there was no internet back then. You know, you were kind of doing things and doing events, and especially like you said, you were turning up to do events that you really had maybe never even done before, or certainly never trained. So yeah, how were you training? What was this way that you developed yourself through practice and intuition and experience? Yeah, what was training like for you back then?
It's like, you know, you started doing these events, you started to realize, okay, you know, my powerlifting training is not gonna be the way here. It's not gonna make me go in this sport where I want to go. I gotta add to it, and I did. I was like, my thing is like, you know, most people, even from powerlifting especially, they think that, you know, you put up a certain regime or how your week is going to be, and they do it on a weekly basis, and, you know, they bench or squat or something on Mondays and this and that day, and I used to do that until and that even came with powerlifting as well. I didn't think about on a weekly basis. I thought 2 weeks. So I was constantly changing what I was doing. So if you do everything on a weekly basis, your body kind of gets used to it. And it starts coming mechanically, movements like in powerlifting and whatnot. And your body gets used to that. And I believe you won't gain as much if you were able to switch things up more. So you're doing bench press, you know, but another day you're doing a closer bench press, or you're doing a wider thing, or you know, doing incline bands and you know, behind the neck, and you got to switch it all up. So I started doing this in a 2 week basis. So I'm like, yeah, certain days I would hit similar muscle groups just in a different way, and I believe that how I trained that way, you know, served me good and helped me going into the strongman, because it was all sorts of movements, all sorts of, you know, helping exercise and this and that. when I got into strongman, I pretty much kind of stopped doing the bench press, but I would concentrate on more on high incline and overhead presses and things like that. And but I would still do bench press sometimes, just with a closer grip, and after I've done the other things. So
I suppose the more variety you can put in because of the obviously powerlifting, you're squat, bench, and deadlift.
Yeah, but you just concentrate on these three things.
Yeah, with the strongman, the variety of movements and implements and types of events that may have been thrown at you, you need that variety of I suppose strength through different planes, and being able to pick things up and move with them and all the rest of it. So you really had to, because I think strongman now, am I right that it's becoming a bit more? There seems to be more moving events and more traveling events and less static in general than there was back when you were competing. Is that fair to say, or is that not right?
It's actually become more static than it used to be.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I believe. But yeah, I think it's pretty well balanced. For a couple of years, it started to get just like too heavy or too static. And but I believe when I talk about strongman is strength athletics. And that's what it is, basically. You got to be an Olympic lifter. You got to be a power lifter. You got to be a track and field athlete in a way. Some ways a bodybuilder and thrower. You got to be able to throw a shot put or have explosive. So I stopped like deadlifting every week or something like that. I was doing a lot of power cleans and high pulls like they do for Olympic lifting. I would work on that explosiveness. My deadlift training, I would usually use no belt. I would stand up on a little block, like I don't know if you remember the plastic Coke boxes for the little Coke.
Oh yes, bottles. Yeah.
So I would use that. I would stand on top of that and deadlift.
So you were doing like deficit deadlifts, yeah? You were lifting up, yeah. Because
I wanted to be able to. First of all, it kind of teaches you to use your legs for the start in deadlift. You need to really concentrate on that, but it also makes you start way stronger. And the faster you can move weights from the floor, the more likely it is that you're going to finish it. And so that I would always concentrate on, lifting big weights, but being explosive and having the muscle endurance. So it's a hard thing to balance.
Because I suppose in some events it's kind of like the max that you can lift, whether that be a deadlift or whether that be a log press or an axle press or something. And in other events, it's how many can you do in 60 seconds. So you've got that big, that repetitive kind of endurance, sort of lactic acid to kind of deal with. Yeah. And in other events, like you say, it may be picking up a yoke or a sandbag or whatever, and as fast as you can run 20 meters. So like you say, it really does. It's strength athletics, isn't it? It really does cover so many different bases that you need to make sure you're hitting in training and in preparation.
Yeah, I remember I've seen pictures. I remember from the World's Strongest Man in Mauritius. We were throwing bricks over a wall, and I had never noticed. I had never clicked with me, but I need to find that picture again. It's actually, I'm throwing it and I've kind of just released it. It's just left my hands and my feet are at least a foot from the ground. Foot and a half. I didn't know. I didn't know I was like exploding that much with it and jumping. The thing is, I didn't have the longest arms like somebody else, like that could really just swing it. So I would have to use my explosive power, and so it's a different technique of throwing, especially over a wall. Then you had somebody like Rikokiri or something like that would had long arms, like get this really long swing with it, and but that just shows you how much explosiveness I was putting into it.
I suppose the intention is there to kind of push the ground away and to jump, but the intention is there for the explosiveness. But when someone actually catches that in a single frame, and you see you have actually kind of like left the ground by, like you say, 18 inches, and you're throwing this up. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. So would you do things in training like jump squats and things like that? Would you physically do any plyometrics or jumping, or is that just a consequence of lifting the weights fast? You're trying to be as explosive as you can.
How a lot of people, when they do their squats, and even with the lighter weights, they'll just go down and come up, and they know it's coming up, and they'll just kind of slow down. But to me, that's the wrong way, because you want to be explosive, so you got to all the way through. And I believe that helped. I could dunk a basketball. I could, like, I was a decent shot putter. It was the same thing with the shot put. I was this far off the ground when I was letting a shot go.
Yeah.
Did you? So I've got a couple of questions here, because you say you didn't know you were doing that. If you'd have realized at the time you were doing that, would it have affected your training? Because you know how some things just happen, and then when someone points them out, and you start overthinking it, and then it actually makes things worse. That's question number one. But two, we were speaking about over the weekend as well, and I found this really interesting, and it goes with Pat Flynn, who we spoke to last week, who was talking about fitness, just generalism in general. I was trying to think of a word there. But fitness generalism. So to win World's Strongest Man, you don't have to win all the events, do you? You have to win at the end. Yeah. So it's one of those things. Who wins? Is it the all-rounder, the person who's 80% good at everything and is kind of steady all the way through, rather than being the person who can deadlift the most, or the person who can press the most, or the person who can pull the biggest truck? They might run away with that one event, but they don't necessarily win the whole thing. So it's kind of like, what would your approach be, and advice be to people for training, for kind of the...
it's interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of people have had this discussions that some are just more technical than others, or they're fast on their feet, or on this and that. Through my 4 wins, not World's Strongest Man, if there was a deadlift, I was first or second. If there was an overhead, I would take first or second. If there was a squat, first. Then I would win the loadings and whatnot. So, being athletic, but still have the strength to be up there with the strongest guys in those kind of movements. That's, to me, is the best way. At that time, that was the ultimate package.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? It's being very, very good at everything, rather than being a specialist, which is what we kind of spoke about last week, being a specialist in one thing, and weak in other areas. You're very, very good. You were very, very good. You were first or second, at all the events. So
that's a great answer, though. Do you need to be like 80%? No, you just need to be really good at all of it.
The funny thing is, like, my first World's Strongest Man and Tenerife, in the end, I think I won 3 out of the 8 events, but my points were like an average of being second place, throughout the contest.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And you said you competed in the World's Strongest Man in Mauritius as well.
Yeah.
Which year was that? Can you remember?
Mauritius was 96. I think that was my last win.
Yeah. Oh no, I only say because my wife was born in Mauritius, and my mother-in-law's Mauritius, so we've been over there quite a lot, and yeah, and I think I remember it. Did you say, is that the one where you were throwing the bricks over the wall? I think, because I remember seeing a video of something where I think someone had a bit of an accident on that, because they were throwing the bricks and it kind of hit the top of the wall and came back down on them, or nearly came back on.
There was a throw there, yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Funny enough, it's like I struggled a little bit on one of the lower heights in the beginning, which could have costed me a lot. But I got it over in my third throw. Because, you get maximum 3 throws. I got it over, and then I kept going higher and higher.
Yeah.
But no, that it's just like, if you're not hitting it exactly right, if your angle is slightly wrong, it kept coming, like getting on the top and coming back on the same way.
Yeah. I was going to ask you as well, Magnus, in terms of, like I said, I was doing some research in that this week, and so Iceland, obviously, I think there's about 370,000 people in the whole country, which is kind of like the equivalent of I suppose, like a medium town over here in England, and that's across the whole country. And out of the World's Strongest Man, it's been going for about 46 years. It's only been won by 24 separate different men. Obviously, you've won it 4 times. John Paul Sigmundsson's won it 4 times, and only 13 different nationalities. So actually, there's been 9, because obviously you got Hafthor Bjornsson as well from Iceland. So I think 9 years has been won by someone from Iceland, and it's quite. I was reading like about Iceland. It was quite. I just wanted to. What makes the? I've got some stuff written down which I thought was really quite nice, like from a sort of evolution and a science point of view. But what makes Icelandic people and Icelandic men, so strong and so good at these kind of events? Do you think?
Well, I believe, like when the Vikings were sailing, a long time ago, it was hard. It was tough getting there, and and going through the winters, it was seriously hard and seriously tough. And I think the strongest survive. And I think, those genes have come with us, through time. Now, mind you, that nowadays it is getting diluted a bit, like everywhere. But I think that's in our heritage, And the thing is, we are brought up. It's like my younger years, and even I spent on a farm. My grandfather and grandmother had a farm, and I stayed there until I really had to be at school. And farm life. But those times there was no like these old nice machinery you have now. It was tough. And even though you were little or whatnot, you had to work. I was doing the cattle at some point, and this little ram got a hold of me and was like throwing me around in there when I was a young boy until I got saved. I remember at the farm as well, I was teasing the chickens, and I got attacked by the rooster. I still have a scar under my eye after his class.
Yeah. Yeah, because when I read, I did think, well, you know, and it said that kind of what I read was it's to do with, it says it's a combination of like genetics and natural selection, and it's kind of what you said, that with like the harsh winters, like back in the, you know, we're talking, you know, hundreds of years ago, you know, so the bigger and stronger men survived and thrived, and they'd obviously be more desirable for women and stuff at the time. So like you say, that natural selection of just, and one thing I read was that was kind of weakness was bred out of Iceland, you know, what I mean? So it's kind of like it was just bred out over hundreds of years and stuff. And it's funny because like you say, yourself, you know, John Paul Sigmarsson, yourself, Hafthor Bjornsson, and lots of other, you know, you know, strong men, you know, who are high level strong men, obviously coming from Iceland. So no, it's just interesting. And we spoke briefly about the series Vikings at the weekend, and I saw something. Were you ever in something like a TV show or anything? Did you ever do any acting in one of those kind of shows? Because I saw some pictures and it looked almost like it could have been you in some kind of like one of those sort of shows. Were you ever in any of those?
I did some ads, advertising, like a Vikings, and well, probably the famous one is the Dodge Ram one, where the
Dodge Ram. Okay, yeah.
And so that was showed on Super Bowl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, one of the breads there. I've actually been in 2 advertisements that's been shown on Super Bowl over my time. So the first one was a Coors Light commercial.
Okay. Yeah, because I saw, I was like I say, I was looking through some research and I saw these pictures and I thought, because I remember I watched there was a film a couple of years ago, it may only be a year ago, called The Northman, and it was like a film, a Vikings sort of film, and Hafthor Bjornsson had a part in that. You know, he played something, and I just wondered. I saw this screenshot, and I thought maybe you've been in one of these shows or something that I didn't, because I saw the shot. But like you say, it's from like advertising where you did TV ads and stuff as in the Viking. Yeah, it's really, really cool. Yeah. I had another question, Magnus, if that's all right, as we start to wrap up. It's from a young lad who actually trains at the gym that I run, called Patrick, and he's 15 years old, and he's into his rugby and strength training. He's only a young man, obviously, and he just said, do you have any sort of words of wisdom or advice for someone who's, you know, a young teenager just looking to get stronger and to develop for strength, and specifically maybe for sport and rugby and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, you mentioned something about training in the beginning. My training would always, I would try to keep away from failures. I would train, like I said, more than anybody else. I would take it up to close to failures. If I wasn't pretty sure I could do the next rep, I wouldn't do it, because I believe, you know, and I would just do more sets instead. So I believe, you know, if you go to failure, you're making your body suffer in the way that, you know, your ligaments, everything starts to ache. And if you keep doing that, and the aches and pains and that comes with it, usually ends up with an injury. And I would try as much as I could to eliminate that. You know, go as close to the failure as I felt comfortable with. Like I said, if I was going to do something for 8 reps and I felt on the 7th rep I wouldn't be able to do it, I would stop it instead of going for the last one and failing it. I'm not saying it didn't happen. It did happen, but this way, I believe you can train harder, you recover faster, so you're able to train quickly again. So you'll be able to put in more volume of training.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad you've said that, because it's something that I try and hammer home to all of our members all the time about you don't need to train to failure, and you should training to failure shouldn't be a regular occurrence or a goal.
No,
and the fact that you're, who you are, and 4 times world's strongest man and powerlifting champion, and you say that is just fantastic. And obviously, you say, if you're, not saying you, like you say, but if you're competing, and you also said, didn't you, you try to really, I suppose, peak or aim really hard for this, for say one or 2 events a year, and it might be the world's strongest man. And obviously in competition, you're going as hard as you physically can, and you're going to max out at comps and things like that. But
yeah,
day-to-day training, week-to-week training is not required. Yeah,
I would never in training work with comp weights. I would always work with a bit lighter weights. Because I believe when I come to the competition, the adrenaline is up and everything is going to feel the same or even feel lighter.
Yeah, no, that's super.
It was interesting because we were talking to Matt Diamond over breakfast the weekend, and he was saying Big Laws is his trainer these days. Lawrence Charlie, is that what he's called? That's his name. And he said, and I said, like, oh, what's your training like under him? Because I think Matt was training himself. And he said, oh, he's got to be doing less, which I thought was really interesting. Because we talk a lot about that on this podcast as well. And like the coach me and James have got talks about training within comfort and expanding your comfort zone while training within comfort. Because lots of people say, nothing ever grows in your comfort zone. It's like, yeah, but with weight, it's slightly different, because if you go outside your comfort zone with a weight, you hurt yourself. Whereas if you just keep moving towards that, the proximity of your comfort, you can actually expand it until it engulfs your goal. And then, like you say, for world's strongest man, then you can just turn up and win it. So that's amazing.
Well, the thing is, like I said, I still believe I trained more than anybody else at that time.
Yeah.
And I think that played a big part in I had problems putting on weight. That was the struggle. There was a reason I didn't get heavier than I was. The heaviest I ever got, if I remember right, was 134 kilos, maybe 36. I think it was 34. Usually at most of the man, it was about 128.
Because you said as well, didn't you, at the weekend, about the amount that you eat now, that you used to have to eat lots and lots and lots just to maintain the weight.
I used to have to kind of force feed.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, with the amount of
sometimes that takes the enjoyment out of eating,
Yeah.
Now I just eat. I'm never full. I just eat.
And now we know you like your desserts with a scoop of vanilla ice cream as well. We know that.
Yeah. So if you're not stuffing yourself, you can allow yourself that.
Yeah. Paul, were you going to say something? Sorry.
No, I mean, I was on that subject of food. I mean, in the modern strongman, particularly if you've been on YouTube for more than a couple of hours, you'll see that there's lots of kind of a day of eating with a strongman, and you can get this opinion that a lot of the modern strongman competitors are just eating tons of junk food, just calorie. What exactly would you be eating? Because obviously trying to get that food volume in is tough, and like you say, it takes the enjoyment out of it. And often people turn, particularly when they want to put mass on, they'll turn to those calorie dense junky foods because it's just a way of getting energy in, isn't it? So is it a kind of mistake to eat that kind of food? I mean, you were light, you were powerful, you were strong, but you know, and you were lean as well. I mean, how would you advise someone to eat for strength to get bulk on, but at the same time maintain their health?
Well, first of all, you need a lot of protein, but a lot of carbs as well. So, but you got to be careful, but especially with the fats and stuff like that, because you're putting in way much more food than a normal person would do. So you got to be careful to not eat too much fatty or a lot that would increase your cholesterol too much. And yeah, it is. It ain't easy, and I get it. You know that sometimes you just want to grab that fast energy sugar bars or whatnot, whatever it is. But I tell you one thing though, nowadays people are more aware of what they're doing, what they're eating, and they, you know, you try to eat healthy, you try to, you know, just have it in there, and there is science behind everything now. And you even these guys have nutritionists that basically tell you, like, you know, steak and rice. Yeah, just like keep putting that in, chicken and rice and what that, you know, it's like it's difficult, and it's a lot of work to eat that much like some of these guys do. It seriously is.
But at the moment, I think, Magnus, if I'm correct, you're 60 now, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at 60 years old, I mean, you look strong, you look lean, you look fit, you look healthy, and you obviously still, just to touch on before we close, you obviously still train regularly and hard. But what is your focus in your training now? I mean, what does your training? Obviously, your training looks different than when you were competing kind of 30 years ago. Yeah. But what does your training look like now in terms of regularity and what you actually do when you train as someone who's 60 now, as opposed to world's strongest man in his 30s?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I don't train as much as I would like to. But no, I just try to be fit now, you know, reasonable strong. And, you know, once in a while, I'll put a little extra on just to have a feel for it. But there's no need. You know, I've proven everything there is to prove, not just once, but a couple of times. And I got nothing to prove anymore. But one of the great things is I'm still involved with the sport. And I think I'm blessed and privileged to be so.
Brilliant. And I'll just quickly say that the event that we were at the weekend with you, which I know you've also got like kind of Magnus adaptive strength, and it's obviously something like, because obviously disabled strongman and strongwoman, it's not like you know, it's not a money spinner, it's not a televised thing. It's obviously something that you care about and that you're passionate about. I mean, the ladies and the guys that we saw at the weekend, they're so inspirational, aren't they?
Yeah. You know, it's like you can see these people, they are stepping out of their disabilities, they're adapting. And it's so much fun to see and fulfilling to see athletes like that that have found something that makes their day better. They found the sport that they're interested in. You know, before, you know, it was only, you know, powerlifting. There was only bench pressing or whatnot. But in this, they can lift stones, they can lift logs, they can, you know, they can pull up a vehicle or whatnot. And you know, it's taken years to be involved with. I've been involved with it for a long time. Helped develop come up with some of the events that I used. The modified, wheelchairs and whatnot. And it's just, I believe it is giving back to the sport. Sport has been good to me in many ways, even though I'm in aches and pains. But it's been a good way that I've been able to live the life that I have, be in the sport that I love, and still be involved with it.
And I think for both Pete and I, who were there for the first time, it's almost like, I suppose it was a bit of a life-changing weekend, really, just because it shifts your paradigm of what's possible, and it just is so inspiring, and it just kind of opened up a whole nother, world that we didn't know existed, really. You can see things on Instagram or on YouTube, but actually being there next to the athletes while they're doing it and seeing what they're going through and seeing the preparation was incredible. You're in Cardiff now. You're in Cardiff this weekend, aren't you, for a big event? What's the event this weekend?
This is the Giants Live in Cardiff this weekend on Saturday. I believe it's sold out. And it's the World Deadlift Challenge as well, championships. And apparently they've added 2 women to it that is going to go for the record, which is exciting as well. But I want to add a little bit to that, kind of like a wisdom that I believe in. I say, you can become anything, you can achieve anything, you can be the best version of yourself. You might not become the world champion, but because few do, but you can be the best that you could possibly be if you're willing to work hard enough for it.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap up this episode, Magnus. It's been, we've been on for about an hour now, and it's an absolute honor and a privilege to have you on. Pete, any final thoughts before we wrap?
I had a few, but what Magnus has just said there, I did a presentation for some of my guys in a group that I've got online on Tuesday night with 5 of my big takeaways from this. Number 1 was adapt and overcome, which you've said. The thing about not everyone's going to be a world champion, not everyone's going to be the best at what they do. I had a chat with Chris Ricks, who was one of the competitors in one of the seated classes. He's got cerebral palsy, as has Gary Clark, who organised the event. So shout out to Gary as well, and who was competing in the same event. And they said, or Chris was saying, they can't win their category because of their condition. The people who win the category haven't got cerebral palsy. They've got something different, and it kind of goes their back. But that didn't matter because they were just competing against each other to come 3rd or 4th. So it didn't matter if they got the trophy. They were competing against each other. So there's still that healthy competition. And hopefully in the future, they'll have their own category when there's more people involved in the sport. So
that might well happen, but the main thing is come together. Yeah, you're competing, but everybody is a winner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing. It was amazing.
Paul, anything as we wrap up?
I didn't really want to intimidate, I guess, showing up, because I'm sorry to say, but my 4-year-old already told me that I'm the world's strongest daddy. So, but I'm gonna have to say to him, unfortunately, I'm not the world's strongest man, but I have spoken to him, and therefore I'm only 1 degree of separation away. But otherwise, I think my kids are going to be pretty excited to say that I've spoken to you, because I think it's surprising that young children, they do really value strength. I think it gets beaten out of kids in school. I think the kids, they want to know who's strong. They want to know who's fast. They want to know who's the best at things. My kids keep asking me about so who's the strongest man? Who's this? Are you strong? Who's that? Is he stronger than you? Is that? They're excited about these things, and we kind of lose track of them. And I think there's something primal in us. about being strong. And so when we see expressions of it on TV, I think it really gets something deep in us where we get excited, like, okay, there are actually people pushing limits. This is what it is to be a person, to be human, to be a man as well, is to be strong, is to pick things up. Actually, there's something in us that finds that very exciting. So my kids are going to be excited that I've spoken to you.
Brilliant. And yeah, good luck. Obviously, we had Becca on the podcast a few weeks back, who's going to be at Cardiff this weekend, going for that deadlift. I think it's her and Lucy, both probably going head to head for these huge deadlifts of 300 kilos plus, you know, which is incredible. Magnus, if our listeners don't follow you already on social media and things, what's the best way that people, I mean, I know you're obviously on Instagram and things like that, but how is it best for people to kind of keep a track of you and what you're doing?
Well, it's best for them to do that on Instagram, I would think. It's just Magnús Ver Magnússon. Because my Facebook is pretty much full, and I got hundreds of people on a waiting list that I need to go through. But so yeah, if you do a follow on Insta, I'll appreciate it.
Excellent. And I've got to just mention the Magnus, the classic that I've been looking at, where you have your competition in Iceland, which is a proper rugged outdoor like strongman event you do every year, isn't it, in Iceland? Yeah. That's gone on my my bucket list to go out and watch one year, I think, to take a trip out to Iceland, because that looks absolutely.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be live streamed, so keep an eye out for how to watch it, because it's different.
Yeah,
it's old school kind of strongman, and it's November in Iceland. Yeah. So you're not just battling each other and battling the events, you're battling the elements as well.
Finally, I'll just give a shout out to my mate Hallie Gudmundsson, Harulda Gudmundsson, who I used to work with him about 10 years ago. I'm still kind of friends with him on socials and stuff like that. So I sent him a picture of us and you. And he's a member of your gym in Reykjavik. He moved back to Reykjavik 2 years ago, and he says he's a member of your gym, so he sees you around a bit. Like, well, of course you do.
Deary me. Thank you so much, Magnus. Thank you, everyone, for listening. That was episode 158. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're listening or watching on a platform that allows you to do so. Subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and obviously, if you don't already follow Magnus, then really do, because some inspiring stuff, and you'll see all the events coming up and everything that he does. But certainly give Magnus a follow, and we will be back next week for episode 159. Thank you so much, Magnus. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.